But just out of curiosity, how many of you are students? Okay, great. How many of you are in security? Anybody? All right. How many are in IT? Perfect. All right, this talk should be at least semi-useful to most of you. We're not going to get into too many technical things, so I'll kind of give you a little bit of background before we get started here, just around another talk I gave earlier. If you have a second to check it out, it kind of goes into what Infosec is and how offensive security kind of plays into IT as a whole, and then kind of how to get started. If you guys are students and obviously getting ready to get started, there's a whole talk that I gave earlier about trying to get started in Infosec and why we need that, and some of the things to not let you or deter you from moving into Infosec, because it's a pretty fun career, honestly. I get to hack things all day long, and I don't have to go to jail, and I don't have to wear orange. It's great. Or I don't know what color you guys wear here in Armenia.
No color.
No colors, okay. Out of curiosity, does everybody speak English? I'm going to try and go really slow because obviously I'm the American here and you guys speak like 10 languages, so I got a lot of respect for more than one language. Everybody speak English? Anybody not? Okay, perfect. So my name is Tyler Robinson. I'm going to go ahead and get this presentation going. The talk I'm going to give today is on the state of security. Now, when I say the state of security as a whole, I'm really talking about cybersecurity, what we have going on in the world. Basically, everything is interconnected now. There is a phone in probably every one of your hands. Some of you are looking at it, some of you are not. Those all have security implications. It takes a lot to secure those devices, the back-end networks, the servers, the data you use. So you've seen a lot in the news with pipelines getting blown up or ransomed. You see a lot in the news around different hacks, different breaches. All of these things are kind of the state of where we're at in security today. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about that and why that's an interesting dilemma. And then we're going to speak a little bit on how we should be doing better. I'm not going to get into too many of the technical aspects of that, but we'll cover a few. And then really how to get started if you're interested in this kind of stuff, what you can do to move into this space and really make a difference in the world. At the end of the day, we're short almost 500,000 people within inside of the security space. And there's just not enough students, there's not enough people transitioning into this to cover the technologies that we're deploying. Technology is moving very, very fast. Companies are standing up and being sold every day. And there's no real way for us to keep up with that without people getting into security. So a little bit about me. I'm a hacker by trade, a penetration tester, a red teamer. There's lots of different names and colors associated with what I do. But governments, companies, clients, they pay me to find holes and break into their systems and kind of help them get better, tell them how an attacker might go about doing that. I'm a co-host on a podcast, so if you are trying to get started in this or you're interested in security, Security Weekly has been a 15-year podcast. We've covered pretty much everything for the last 15 years around security. Go check that out. We do a weekly show. In fact, we have 15 different shows on the network, all related to different aspects of application security, enterprise security, pen testing, and red teaming. So there's a lot for just about everybody there. I kind of specialize in ICS and physical, but as a pen tester, as an offensive security person, you really have to know a lot about everything, and it's pretty hard to specialize in a ton of things in the general sense. I'm also a trainer and a speaker at Black Hat, DEF CON. I speak at a lot of conferences, do keynotes. We try and really spread the knowledge that we have and build this community out as best we can. So be sure to reach out if you guys are interested in this, you have any questions. Very, very happy to try and help you and at least provide some guidance. And there's some great people within inside of your guys' community here in Armenia that can really get you guys moving in the right direction if you do need that help. So what's on our agenda today? Like I said, we're really going to start to focus on the state of security. Where are we at today? How can we start looking at the problems that we have? We've kind of come into this cloud SaaS single sign-on environment. Everybody's moving to applications on the internet. We've got tons of security things. We've got blinky boxes for just about everything, firewalls, appliances, but yet we still see breaches with inside the news just about every day. There's a big company that has a lot of money to people doing security, so we're going to talk about kind of why I think that is. And then we're going to kind of cover why security doesn't have to be so expensive. Again, we've got billions and billions of dollars from hundreds of thousands of companies all around trying to secure things. And yet we don't really need to spend as much money as a lot of these places are doing. And I'm going to talk a little on the fundamentals, some of the things that I think will make a difference as you see a lot of the ransomware attacks happening to a lot of these big companies. If many of these companies would have just covered on some of the fundamentals that I'll speak about, they would have been just fine. So we'll cover what those fundamentals mean and kind of why that's an important aspect for this. And then we'll talk about how we're going to do security better, and then getting started and building a community. I think all of these points are the only way that we actually make a difference in this world. And as you've probably started in your IT careers, sometimes you feel like you do the same thing, you don't really make a difference, you're just changing passwords, fixing someone's computer. But really you're supporting an ecosystem, you're supporting business, the data that lives within inside of the environments and the companies you're helping. All of those things are very important. And the security side of that is even more important because it is what is protecting the end user. It's protecting you, it's protecting your mom, it's protecting your grandma. I'm sure she has Facebook. We all want to make sure that her cat pictures stay on her Facebook account. So welcome to 2021. 2020 was a mess, wasn't it? Yeah, that was horrible. So with the work from home and kind of everybody making a transition back to a work in the office, we're going to see, I believe, a lot more security breaches. We've had people at home, maybe not on secure networks. Their kids have dangerous iPads on the network. They're working with schools. They're sharing laptops, doing homework. So there was probably a great deal of risk involved and introduced into these devices. And so as we come back into the corporate networks, all of that risk and some of that bad hygiene is going to start to play into what the work from home and coming back to work looks like. And so we've got a lot of things happen. We've got ransomware, we've got cyber threat, we've got APT, we've got a lot of breaches. So 2020 was just the start to the mess that I believe for cybersecurity is going to start happening and has already been seen in the news lately with all the ransomware and attacks. So 600% increase in cyber attacks during the COVID period. It was already pretty bad before we had COVID. We had a pandemic to that, and then we have cybercrime increase because we've got people that are displaced. They don't have jobs. We've had a lot of people working from home, so the risk was introduced. That increased a ton. So let's really talk about where we've come and where we were. Back in the early 80s, we all had terminals, we had mainframes, we had thin clients that would connect to that. We've made a shift, and I think we've come almost full circle now, because from there we all went to some VDIs, we went back to hard desktops and everything was networked and we had servers, and then we decided we wanted a virtual on top of our servers, and then we abstracted that and we all went to a cloud, and now it's, everything is solved because it's all in the cloud. And we've kind of even went one step further than that and abstracted the hardware in the cloud layer. We're starting to do SaaS applications. Or services like Lambda, right? Like these are things that is a new way of operating, but it is the same challenges, it is the same infrastructure, it has just gotten much, much more complex. And so as we start to talk about that, and we really realize what it means to get to the cloud, we start to understand why we have so many breaches and why security has gotten so complex that people can't seem to do it well. That's why we end up with so many breaches. You're basically putting your data out on someone else's servers, and you're tying a single password now for all of your applications to a SaaS application that then signs you into everything else. So this is a problem, and I believe this is kind of where we're starting to get to, is the traditional network where we had a firewall and we had border security and we had the one hard outside layer. that is now widely dispersed and put in the hands of other companies that may or may not do a good job, or they may relieve or rely on you to do the configurations for those security things, and you think they're doing the configurations. So this is a problem. I think this is one of the reasons we're in a very interesting time to kind of be there and figure out the security implications and start the security around the cloud. Then you really start to think about the implications of what data gets stored on the cloud. If you think about a CRM, where you have all your customer records, you have all your contacts and clients, you think about the financials, you're using some online financial application, or chat application, Slack, Teams. I'm sure everybody's using those, right? Customer communications, customer names, contracts get shared there. In fact, if you're a development shop, you're probably sharing code there. You're probably sharing files there. So all of these things that may have proprietary code or IP in them, they're all being shared out on the cloud. And they're shared underneath of a single, usually single sign-on password. So if these companies or your users are not picking great passwords, guess what? All that data, it belongs to me. That's not a good thing. So really, once we gain credentials as an ethical hacker, and if you'd like to kind of understand the difference between a criminal and a hacker, please go check out the other talk I gave. There's a big difference. The hackers were here to help make the world a better place and secure things. It's just a mindset. So the ethical hackers, we're really trying to figure out how to get into these systems, and once we do, it's a really bad day. So I'll give you a quick little story. I was working with a very, very large company. They are very new, but they're very disruptive. They're well known. And they decided that they weren't going to have an enterprise network. They were going to try and do this whole SaaS and cloud application, everything. No corporate network. And so we were able to try to hack this company. And they thought, being in the cloud, being in SaaS, having all the right things set up, they're very, very secure. They didn't think about where things lived and what happens when you gain that access. And so as we were hacking them, we password sprayed, which is sending guest passwords against all their users. And guess what? They had two-factor authentication, which means you have to have a code on your phone that lets you in. We were able to utilize a phishing page that looked just like their two-factor, and they signed into our fake page, and they then went to a page that looked like their two-factor, and we passed that two-factor number on and then signed them in for them. We proxied their two-factor. Guess what? We got access to just Slack. Well, you wouldn't think that's a big deal, right? It's just Slack. People just talk on Slack. From Slack, we were able to gain access to GitHub, to all of their proprietary code for this is a very large company, all their backend AWS configurations, all their AWS servers, their dev, their prod. We were able to utilize a single piece of access into Slack in order to gain compromise of a whole company. And that is just one example of many, many we've done. And so, again, this comes back to this is why this is a problem. We have a lot to kind of figure out. Everybody is migrating to the cloud. We have very complex setups, very complex networks, applications. Half the time, they don't even understand how these applications work. You start adding in some Docker configuration, some Kubernetes into that. Really, these developers are just trying to make some of this work. And so at the end of the day, that becomes a security risk because once it's working, no one's really testing. So we have all this technology. You think all of these security companies out in the world were able to put a box in that does some AI and some ML and all of the fancy buzzwords that we have. The information that we have on security, all the protocols, we know how to secure things. This is not new. It's been 4 decades of learning security. The information, you can go out on YouTube. There's 100 training companies that will teach you security. And yet we still have data breaches every single day in the news. And they're not by just little companies. I'm talking every major company. And LinkedIn just had an API scraped, all 700 million of their users enumerated right there through a bad API configuration. So these are things that you would think we'd have this solved in 2021, but we do not. We have a ton of things such as EDR XDR, all the buzzwords. You can put in whatever buzzword you want there right now. AI, ML, zero trust, all of these things. These are all designed to secure us. And again, still, we are failing at this. Now, I'm not one to really try to spread the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We don't want to discourage anyone at the current state. But that does mean we have to do better. And a lot of that reliance of us doing better is inspiring you, the next generation, the students in here, the people in IT. This is a community and collaborative effort. We really have to make this journey together. Up until now, there's been very distinct lanes. You've got your developers over on one side. The developers don't really like to talk to the infrastructure guys. They make them do more work. And then you got the security guys over in the corner. They're always the ones causing problems and making you change passwords. They're pretty annoying, I promise. And then you got the offensive people coming in and breaking all your stuff and making you have tons of work and JIRA tickets and code. Those are all things that, everybody's just not collaborating. At the end of the day, we all are on the same team. And in order for the world to start to change, and we have to start to see some of this, we really have to make a difference and start changing how we look at security. So again, even with the best hardware, the best appliances, all the best blinky lights, we are not doing a good job. And that's going to come down to people. We're at a place where technology is not the answer. Everybody's trying to create a product. Everybody's trying to go to market. They're going to get the next VC. All of these things are great, and we do need the technology, but the technology is not the answer for security. People are the answer for security. And I think I have an idea around some ways to start to make this a little bit better. And I hope this is what starts to change, but it does require everyone to get involved. First, we do want to kind of address the fact that everybody thinks security is very expensive, right? The reason that all these breaches are happening, the reason that things aren't going right in the world is because they don't have enough budget, they don't have enough people, right? That's really not the case. It is really utilizing what you have to the best of your abilities. With all the tools that are out here, between open source, between the free stuff that is built into Microsoft, the protections that are built in inherently to Windows as things start to move forward, all of these things just take time and effort to configure. So really, does that mean that the problem is everyone is lazy? That may be a little bit of it. We're really just trying to make things work. I think a lot of it is the fact that everyone has a hard job. They've overloaded on work, and they aren't trained, or they're not being invested in as people in order to figure out what these tools should be configured as to have a secure state. And again, that goes back to the collaboration. We really need to understand the business needs of how to make the business money and enable the business while still securing all the things that the business has to do. If security is causing problems to the extent that the business is not functioning, then really there is no point of the security. And so, again, we go back to there's a ton of ways that you can actually deploy security without having to spend all the money. If you're on a low budget, you're in IT, really taking the time and the effort to understand what is available, what is built in, and what is going to make a difference will go a long ways. And I'll kind of run through these just real quickly. So really the fundamentals is where a lot of this comes down to. The fundamentals such as configurations. Everybody likes to deploy. They think, oh, they got it installed. It takes a lot to get a server up and working. You get a SQL database, you get the connections, and then it's working. So you don't want to touch it. It takes a lot to do configuration, but configuration is where security really starts to come into play. As a pen tester and as someone that breaks things, the scariest environments are the ones that have taken the time to tune and really evaluate the configurations they have deployed. They don't just deploy a box, they spend the time testing that in dev, or they spend time working with the offensive team or the security team to ensure what they're deploying is secure. And then getting back to process and procedure. I'm not much for all the paperwork and the process and procedure. I'm definitely not that type A personality that's got all the paper. We leave that to the paper people. They're really good at that stuff. But process and procedure goes a long ways because it is documented and people have a roadmap to follow. So you can't also discount the processes and procedures that need to be put in place. Documentation is very important, processes are very important, and as you start to do those things, you start to understand that those things drive the configurations, that drive the departments, that brings the collaboration together. So don't discount the process and procedures either. And again, getting back to fundamentals, configuring Active Directory, making sure you're utilizing the tools and testing those things. Firewalls, GPOs. Try not to get stuck, as some of you start to move into the security space in IT, try not to get stuck around all the hype over IOCs and what the latest APT is doing. At the end of the day, if you're getting your configurations right, you're doing good fundamentals, and you're doing detections based on behavior rather than IOCs, you're going to have a much better time finding an attacker or finding someone like me testing your network. Because I promise I'll find a way around your IOC, and I can change my tactic on the fly pretty easily. So behavior is one of those things you want to do instead of the IOCs or signatures. And then user management and training. We cannot discount the core fundamentals that need to be instilled within inside of every IT or person within inside of a technical area. There is a lot of people within inside of HR or financials that have access to very sensitive data. We have to provide them with training. Their job is to figure out the accounting or to hire people. Their job is not to understand security. And so we really have to make sure that we're offering them the ability and the training that's appropriate, and we can't just expect them to know what security is and know how to secure themselves. And so that training is really important. Really pouring back and investing inside people is where you're going to have the best return on investment. And one more point. You can't expect your users to always win either. Again, I will always find a way to phish and gain access to your network. That's not a very fair test for users. So if you're at a corporation or you have a security team and they're punishing people for phishing, I would really ask them and have an open conversation with them around what is the role and responsibility of the end user, and then have technology gaps fill what the awareness of the user or the capability of the user is if they can't identify that phish or they can't click. Again, I promise if I send out a spreadsheet that says 2020 bonuses or firing list, every single person opens that every single time. That's pretty simple. So we can't expect people to not have human nature, not have the psychology to do those things. We need technology gaps to fill in and cover their backs when they make a mistake. They're not security experts. They shouldn't know how to look at a header in an email. So let's make sure that we are protecting them and we're not punishing users for things that is not their job. So some of the things I was talking about that are the fundamentals. Again, process and procedure. That's the boring stuff. That's not really stuff I like to do, but again, we got people that should do that, and you should never discount that process and procedures. Really knowing how your organization is structured, where data lives, having good documentation around that, and ensuring that you have things mapped out if there's a breach. Tabletops are a great way to not have to spend a ton of money, get different groups to collaborate between each other, and start to think and work out what happens if we have a data breach. If we were to be ransomware or someone was to break in, what's our procedure? You get the developers involved, you get the infrastructure team involved, you get the network involved. All of these teams should be talking, and if you can do it in a fun way where these groups start to interact, that collaborative nature goes on and carries on for sometimes years. Those relationships, sometimes everyone's busy. There's no time for people to talk and interact, and utilizing things like tabletops will start to go a long way for security. Once you establish that relationship, or you at least are able to talk to them, you may see a phish and you can call them or email them, hey, remember that tabletop we did? I seen something that looked kind of weird, and that opens that dialogue between different organization and departments. So make sure you're just doing good practices. This comes down to making sure you're separating your admin accounts and not using the same users. A lot of this talk was actually in one that I gave for the fundamentals. Anyway, the next 2 or 3 slides was in a talk I gave for Sci-Hub Armenia back in March, I believe. And go check that out. That goes into the top 10 ways to secure your network for free. And I cover in much greater detail all the different things that you can kind of go back and do as an organization for free that really adds a ton of difficulty to an attacker. two-factor all the things, make sure anything external's got two-factor, like I was saying. There's ways to bypass these things, but you need to have layers of defense and have that defense in depth. Otherwise, if I can bypass one layer and I'm in, that's a bad day for everybody. Host-based firewalls, great idea. Logging and SIMs, these are all just fundamentals. Again, this was some talks I was giving earlier. The attack surface reduction rules. Please go back and look at some of these fundamentals. They're very important, very easy to deploy and do, but they do add a ton to the security of your network. Yeah, there's blocking macros. Sorry, there was a couple more slides in here. But these are all the things that we went through on that, in vulnerability management. But it really comes down to one of the things that we know that there's a problem. The state of security today is not great. We've already talked about that. We know that there is technology to address the technology pieces. That hasn't fixed the problem. We know we've deployed and made more complex networks, and we've got more availability of information and technical people available. That hasn't fixed the problem. So this means that we really do have a people problem. We need to be investing in the education, in the training, and we really need to be pouring into individuals inside of organizations. And if you're an organization owner or you're doing a startup or you're just getting into IT, remember as you move up, the first thing and the best thing you can do is build relationships and invest in people. By doing some of that, you're really able to fundamentally change the mindset and the culture of a company. Without culture change, a company is not going to be secure. There are going to be companies that aren't going to buy into this. Okay? Those are the companies that are getting breached. Those are the companies that don't retain talent. So if you're in one of those companies, try and change it first. Change it from the inside out. Sometimes it only takes one person. Really investing in people that are around you, getting your mindset to a place that is security focused and collaborative, and then start to invest back into that. There's a great quote by Warren Buffett, one of my favorites. It says, "Someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree long ago." This, I can tell you, has rung true for me for over 2 decades. Some of the little seeds that I've planted, some of the little investments that I've put into people, or time I've spent doing very little things, have paid off over 2 decades. Some of the people that I've only talked to 2 or 3 times, and I just offered a little bit of advice just out of nowhere. They've went on to run very large companies and are very, very successful. So really making sure that you're taking the time to establish relationships as you go. I know we're all in IT. We're not really people, right? We don't like people. That's why we sit behind computers. But take the time to learn how to like people. That's where you will grow if you want to have a bigger salary. That's where you're going to get a bigger salary when you can communicate and talk to people very respectfully. You understand business. You will go much further and you'll be a bigger asset to any company you go to. That's a very transferable skill as you move forward. So a better way to do security. How do we do this? Again, we've already talked about the investing in people and the collaboration. Collaboration is truly the piece that has been missing. We, as a IT, Infosec, just a technology group, we have our little groups. We are not very good at collaborating. We keep some of our secrets. We have our special sauce. We know things. Sometimes we're just too busy to share. Sometimes we don't even like to talk to people. Without that collaboration and that knowledge sharing, like I said, we're 500,000 people short in the Infosec community. We have no ability to scale and transfer that knowledge onto the next generation. We have a problem with time. It's taken a lot of us 20 plus years to get to this point where, we came up from a help desk, we learned some of that and went to sysadmin. We were given a chance, now we're a network admin, and then we moved into maybe security, and then we went into offensive security. Right? Like, that takes 20 years. We don't have 20 years anymore because of the speed of technology and because of how big we're scaling. We have to solve this in a different way. And that means a lot around mentorship, and that means a lot around helping guide and pour back into people. Remove the ego. This is one of the big things you'll see in the offensive security space, and if any of you IT or developers have dealt with the offensive security people that have a big ego, I'm very sorry. Most of us do not. We really do try and help. We want to help everybody. We are not any better than anybody else, all the way down to the help desk. There's very hard work going on. But that is a legitimate problem with inside the offensive security space and the InfoSec. Just remove the ego. That goes a long way to help build relationships, to mentor down, and to just be a general good human being. Make sure you don't gatekeep or knowledge keep. Don't hold back knowledge just because you're scared that someone's going to take your job. I promise, anytime that you share and provide knowledge and pour back, it will always pay off in the end. There may be short-term consequences, and not all people are good, unfortunately, but that will always come back, and people will remember the fact that you didn't have an ego, you were open, and you shared the knowledge, and you poured back into them. That may be 10 years from now, but guess what? It always comes back. Be a good human being. And then be very clear on your communication. Again, I said that's one of the best skills you can learn, is really how to communicate with people, how a business operates, and really being able to speak to individuals. If you're speaking to a developer, you can speak their language. You can communicate with them and understand them. If you're speaking to an executive, you're going to change how you speak. So learning that communication and learning the dialogue and being able to articulate what is important to each one of these groups becomes very important. So now you're thinking, all right, InfoSec sounds kind of cool. Maybe I should get started in InfoSec. That's, like I said, we're short. I'm trying to inspire you to come forward and start to help this security problem and make the world a better place. So how do you get started? Well, we do have to find a shortcut for you. And I don't say that I have all the answers to that, because it does take a ton of time and a ton of learning. There's a massive amount of understanding to get into InfoSec. You have to understand the protocols, the underlying technologies, the hardware, basic networking. You've got to understand the different integrations of how development works and how protocols talk to each other. So all of those things, you really have to know just about everything, because in order to break it, you fundamentally have to understand how it works and be able to stand that up. There's no good way around that. So I really encourage you to start finding good people to help mentor you so they can provide shortcuts. There's a lot of ways to spend and waste a ton of time in InfoSec, and there's a few shortcuts you can take. Now, with that, there's a problem with that, because this generation is a little bit more around the instant gratification. We've all grown up and you press play on Netflix, you expect that there's no buffering. We used to have to wait for like one-page images to load on dial-up. So there's an instant gratification piece there that you really kind of have to understand. It's going to take some time. You can't just hop into InfoSec and know everything you need to know in 3 months. This is a process. You're always going to be continually growing. I mean, I've been doing this 20 years. I'm still learning, and that's an everyday thing. So it's very important to learn how to learn and be very patient with yourself, because it's going to take some time. But I do need you to do it faster than 20 years. Reach out, follow a lot of the good InfoSec people. There's great InfoSec people out there on Twitter that are doing amazing blogs. There's Twitch, YouTube channels. All of these people are teaching for free. The community in the InfoSec is very open. We're all about providing that information, and there's almost an overwhelming number of pieces of resources for you to utilize. So find a good mentor that can point you to good, solid advice and good, solid learning and training equipment, and have them help you out. There is always the traditions of getting a degree or doing certificate training. There is advantages and disadvantages to that. I would never discourage any of you from going to university. That's great to get a degree. I'm going to tell you right now, you do not have to go to university in order to be with inside InfoSec. I don't have a degree. I've been very successful without it. However, it does have some limitations. There's jobs that require degrees, and they're starting to catch up. There are things you can learn in university, such as communication, technical writing, fundamentals of how a business works. Those are all things I highly encourage you to take. If you're in classes already and you're doing a degree, definitely focus on the things that are going to make you better at your job. Don't just go do your IT route and get out and have a piece of paper. That's going to get you an interview, and that will help, which is what usually a degree and certificates are for. They will get you established enough that you have a resume in order to get that first interview and start to build your historic or your career experience. But again, you don't have to. but don't get discouraged from doing it either. And the last fundamental part, I believe, for how we start to solve some of this problem, I've alluded to some of this, and really investing in people and collaborating. But one of the key missing pieces that the collaboration kind of brings together, and I'm starting to see here in Armenia, there's some amazing things happening as far as building a community. What is a community first? Community is just people that can come together and enjoy talking about a topic or a passion that they have. With inside of IT, with inside of Infosec, with inside of offensive space, you must be passionate. You must love what you do. You must love this stuff. I assume most of you go home from work and either you're playing a game, you're building a computer, you're hacking on some code. Like, this is just what you like to do. So it's not as much of work. So really being passionate is the first part of that. Bringing together more people so that you have the energy and the passion to help drive each other and start to collaborate. That's where community starts to become important. As Infosec people, as IT people, as developers, that community and those relationships and the tight-knit, open communication and knowledge sharing, that's when you start to change a country. That's when you start to change a company. That's when you can really start to affect your friends that are around you. Maybe they're in a job they don't like. Maybe they work down at the ice cream shop. Where's my boy? He's out there. Yeah, Chris told me that when he started here, he started an ice cream shop. You find people that are passionate and you have a community that starts to push you and you can show people and knowledge share. You can change an entire life of someone and even a family tree by providing them information and changing their direction and career. That's really hard to scale individually, which is why we must have a community. You guys have a great community established here. I really encourage you guys to begin pouring into that. As part of a community, that really means you have to give more than you're taking. And if you're very new to this, you can give something as simple as helping set up the projector or the jump drives and making folders. Like, there's very simple things you can do. You don't have to be highly technical or know everything. Helping the community is just that. Help. Get started and do it. You run into the scalability issue when you're mentoring. As you guys start to move up, or whoever you're starting to mentor as you start to go up your career path, you will realize that more things demand more time. You're very, very limited on time. My schedule currently is literally booked out all day, all night, 7 days a week. There's very little time to mentor there, but I still think it's very important. So there's a scale issue with mentoring. And this is where the community and doing things that, like these events and conferences, where things are recorded, they're able to be shared, they're able to be passed on. Those are things that are important. Again, this comes back to community. We can't scale this doing this individually, otherwise you'll burn out. The more you move up, the less time you have. But you're more of an expert and you have more knowledge and experience to share, which is very important to the next people coming up. Really making sure you have the right attitude. All of us as a community need to be very, very careful that we don't let any kind of negativity or cliques or groups start to establish. Be very open to anybody within inside of your community, anybody that is active or wants to know or learn. Those are very good things to kind of promote. There are a lot of people that don't like to let people into their groups. They don't like to provide knowledge and share. Change that attitude. That's how we start to build a bigger and more diverse community. That's very important. And then let's just be good humans. Empathy goes a very, very long way as you're talking to a company that you've broken into, or you're trying to help solve someone's computer problem and they're very frustrated with you. Really try and empathize and understand that at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all have history, we all have life, things that have happened. We need to understand and be very sympathetic and empathetic to everybody's unique road that they're on. Everyone's at a different stage in life and there's always bad days. If we provide some of that empathy and we really start to be good humans around some of that, that's when we have better atmospheres. We have better community. We don't have a lot of the negativity that you see on the internet. That's not for this. Infosec needs to change that. Armenia, I want you guys to do better than we're doing in America. as you build your community and really start to be very tight-knit and bonded. And then as you start to grow and move up, make sure that you're inspiring other people. It takes a lot to maintain the energy and the passion to always drive forward, to always learn something, to always give back. Make sure that you're providing that inspiration back to people around you. And again, that's just going back to being a generally good person, providing energy, and making sure that you're doing the right thing no matter where you're at. So with that, these are the kind of the states of security. This is some of the problems that we've seen and how to fix them. And really, I want to inspire each one of you. Armenia has been amazing to see what you guys are doing here. The community, the tight-knit country that you guys have bonded together after your guys' revolution, that was fantastic to see some of the changes. This is very, very fertile ground. You have an opportunity to do a lot of things here. It takes a lot to kind of get things going in America. We're very established. There's very specific things set up. I think this is a great proving ground, a very great experiment that can happen if you guys all come together and start to do Infosec, start to do security, start to do being general community better, and start to collaborate. I think that's how we start to change the world. And that all begins with you right here and making sure you're doing what you need to do for each other. With that, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? I can repeat the question for you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. You just mentioned tabletop. I'm not sure what it is. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so tabletop. This is one of the great ways to begin collaborating. When I say tabletop can be anything. It doesn't even have to be security. Tabletop's where you bring a group of people together and you entertain an idea or a scenario, and you play the scenario all the way through with all of the people and what's going to happen piece by piece. So say for something like a data breach. We would do a tabletop where we say, we got an email in, we got a data breach, and we're doing all this on, in a meeting room or on a projector or shared video. We say, okay, what's the first thing that's going to happen? We got an alert, there was a phish. What is the response? So you start to walk through the asset owners. Who's going to send the email? Who's going to try and quarantine and look for things? So you bring in the security team. Maybe you have the desktop and infrastructure team. They're looking at the hardware. They're trying to find indicators. Then you bring in the CEO and the executive. I highly recommend that you bring the executives with inside of the conversation. What is going to be our media response? How are we going to present this to the media? At what point are we? Then you bring in the lawyers. What are we obligated to report as part of this data breach? And you walk through these very, very extensive scenarios so that when something in real life happens, you've already kind of done some of the harder steps of communication. And you find those gaps. Like, we have no idea. We don't have a process for releasing a breach report. We don't know who we need to respond to. In fact, we don't even know who is supposed to respond to that first phishing email. That's not really anybody's current role or responsibility. So you start to build out those processes and you walk through the scenarios and you very quickly understand where those gaps can come in. And you can be very, very elaborate all the way down to, all right, our antivirus was able to detect this. Do we need to do incident response in case it missed anything? So you can start to step through each individual pieces of a scenario and walk through that tabletop. So they call it a tabletop exercise because you remember watching some of the war games where they were sliding tanks across, and you're doing like Risk, the game where you're putting pieces in place and playing the scenario out. That's a tabletop. Does anybody else have any questions? Man, I actually finished early. I blew through a few of those slides.
Well, I I wanted to ask how effective are the password management applications? Something that you always see advertised, and for developers who deal with a lot of information and a lot of passwords, will it be useful?
So the question is, how useful are password managers in today's solutions? A lot of developers are having to use password managers. A lot of companies are developing or adopting password managers. How effective are they? Password managers, depending on their configuration, are a great idea. Now, that being said, we go back to one of my points earlier, configuration matters. The password protecting your password database or application is very important. Some of the password managers are very extensive where you have the ability to check in and check out credentials and they're not even giving you the password. They're very good. However, those password managers are a single point of failure as well. So the configuration of those password managers that are storing all the secret keys, those are very important. Make sure you've got a really good long password that's not reused anywhere else for anything else, very, very long, and that it has two-factor authentication, so you have that second factor, because oftentimes people will forget that really long password. It'll be on a sticky note on their computer, or it'll be on a text file somewhere to remember, or it gets put up in Slack in chat messages. That's happened. So yeah, the password managers, I believe it is better to have a good password manager, but again, make sure you're doing an appropriate job of getting the fundamentals right and securing that appropriately, as well as utilizing those passwords where they should be used. A very, very long password is not very effective if I can pull that password out of memory. We can dump passwords right out of memory from LSASS. There's many tools to do that, many techniques to do that. So I can see your 46-character password as easily as I can see your 5-character password. Long passwords are still important, but endpoint is also important, making sure you're securing those endpoint and you're having separate admin workstations, because those layers of defense, that defense in depth, has to be a thing. If I can get to the passwords, if I can get to LSASS, that means one of your layers failed and you didn't do an appropriate job of locking down and securing that local workstation or configuration. Does that answer your question? Perfect. Yes?
Staying on the same subject, what is the most efficient, effective or safest way to actually share a password with a colleague or a client and back and forth?
That's a great question. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, along those same lines around password managers and adopting passwords and good password processes and procedures, what's the most effective way and secure way to share a password with a colleague or a client or as part of an application? I'm going to say there's not a great or easy solution to that. One of the best things I can say is ensure that you're utilizing secure communications, which is separate from your day-to-day communications. It's often good to use some form of encryption. PGP is a great way. If you're having to email something, you can PGP encrypt something, but then you run into a problem, then you got to share certificates or you share the PGP password. So doing things out of band, having multiple communication channels, so you can send an email that's encrypted and then ensure that you send a signal message or a telegram message to them with the password for the email or the zip file. So you're having almost two forms of communication. Password sharing is a very difficult problem. There's a lot of password managers that allow you to share the access or a one-time token, which then allows them to utilize that token and sign in, or to not reveal the password and it passes it in an encrypted form. Those are all options as well. But just make sure that you're thinking about how an attacker might gain access to that password. Again, oftentimes I'll see a lot of companies send an email and they'll say, here's the zip file, I'll email you with the password in just a minute. Well, as an attacker, if I get access to your email, I have access to both of those emails in the same place. Now that password didn't do anything at all. So just thinking through the logic flow and making sure you're trying to adopt secure practices as you're doing it. Did that cover it for you? Again, let me know when you figure out how to do that, because there's probably a lot of money inside that solution. Anybody else have any questions? Yes. Oh, my favorite guy in the world. He's got a loud voice. I don't know if he needs it.
So my question would be...
I told you he was loud.
My question...
Should I go there?
Awesome.
No, all good.
Just turn it on.
Just turn it on.
A whole room of IT folks, and we're having microphones.
Microphones and printers, they never work.
They're always.
My question would be, how would you build a mentorship community in Infosec? As in, you have people who want knowledge, and you have fewer people who have the knowledge, and now you want to pass that knowledge, so people die, and you want to keep that knowledge ongoing. So how would you do that in more practical ways?
So in more practical ways. The question was how would you practically go about building a security community or a community in general? So one of the core functions and the practical ways to start to do that is really find little groups. You don't want to make inclusive groups, but finding good times to gather with people that you like to hang out with and start to do those, but also find ways to incorporate new people into that. So things like once a week, hacker meetups or tutorials where you guys get together. Sci-Hub Armenia, like show up to the webinars, get on a chat together, maybe do a watching of one of the webinars together. Finding little ways to always be building relationships, always be talking and integrating. And then each one of those little groups really needs to start to find ways and events or opportunities to then mix between other groups. That's one of the ways you end up with very separate groups is by just having them and not mixing them. So ensuring that you have those groups mixing, regularly meeting, making sure that if you're one of the participants and you're trying to mentor, make sure you're bringing people to it, making sure you're showing up regularly. Don't just come once and then stop. So consistency is very important. And then again, mentor, just find people to talk to and find ways to record your information, whether that's a blog, whether that's notes, whether that's a Twitch stream or recording what you're doing so that you don't have to repeat the same thing every time. It's great to have to teach someone, but we can only scale so much if we're not recording and scaling by teaching and passing that information on outside of that. Yes?
Don't switch off after
Meg, a related question is that of vetting. What practices do you recommend for vetting and making sure you don't get the wrong people into the wrong circles?
Absolutely. So the question is, what is the vetting process, or how do you weed out people that you don't want with inside your community? The first thing I'll really say is try not to exclude anybody. There are people that are very negative. There are people that have unique situations in life where they've come up. They may not have an understanding of how to be a good human being. So first, inspire them to be better by you always being better. And then making sure that you're calling them to be higher. You don't have to do that publicly. You don't have to shame, but really making sure that we're privately pulling people aside and say, hey, we can do better than this. We are better than this. Ensuring that you're trying to develop them and bring them, everyone's starting at a different stage in their life. So really having that empathy and that sympathy to know that not everyone is you, not everybody's at your spot. So really make sure you try to mentor them up and provide some of that sympathy and empathy. But there will be negative people within the community. At certain points, you do have to make decisions to give them as many opportunities to move forward and to develop themselves. But you also have to not allow negative behavior or bad behavior to continue unpunished. So whether you deal with that by excluding them from a certain event, or not just pushing them out of the group because they may need the support, but really finding a limited time in which they're able to interact or not interact with the rest of the group, because you do not want that negativity within inside of your community. Go ahead.
Did you try and create your own encryption algorithm?
Would I try and create? Nope. SelfRoll encryption is very dangerous because it has taken, most of the encryption algorithms out there have been developed over many decades, and they've been proven. So the thing with encryption is the time in which it is being broken, and the computers which are going after and trying to break those encryptions have long-standing math behind them in which they can start to chew through those. You can try to do your own thing. I would say I'd be very careful in how you roll that because we always find a way to break most people's encryption that have been rolled themselves. There's a reason that elliptical curve and all of these math haven't been broken or have been broken over time. Computers are getting better, and encryption the math has to match up with how much time that takes computationally to start to break. Again, we can elaborate more on that one later if you want to chat about some experience. And with that, I believe my time's up, so I gotta be respectful of the next speaker and move on.
Thank you.